What's going on, guys? My name is Faraz Siddiqi. Let's talk about 5 of my favorite Dynasty buys. I have a running back you need to buy now before it's too late. And I usually don't like to buy running backs this time of year because a lot can happen between now and the beginning of the season. Not so much injuries, but more so running backs can be added to backfields, right? There can be surprise cuts. And in turn, those cuts can become new additions to backfields on new teams and create muddy backfields. I don't think this particular backfield qualifies as one of those situations. I don't see a running back being added to the Saints backfield. So I am looking to get Kendre Miller on any Dynasty team. I don't currently have him on, and here's why. First of all, I was banging the table for Kendre Miller last year. That didn't work out. I was wrong. He didn't make an impact during his rookie year. I was right about Jamal Williams, though. Why didn't it work out for Kendre Miller? There could have been a combination of reasons, whatever. But it didn't help that he sprained his knee in preseason, which was the same knee where he injured his MCL and meniscus in college, which didn't allow him to participate in the NFL Combine. They rushed him back after a couple weeks, and then he pulled his hamstring right away before the season began. Not good. And then he had to deal with hamstring injuries, ankle injuries the entire season, until he finally got some opportunity with Alvin Kamara missing time in week 18, and he looked pretty good. He was PFF's 4th highest graded running back that week. He had the 8th highest yards after contact per attempt and the 2nd highest missed tackle rate. That's the last we saw of him because that was the last game of the Saints season. If you don't remember, he was a very good prospect. He would have been up there with Jonathan Brooks for me if he came out this year. He has a 3-down skill set, he has the size, but will he have the opportunity this year? That brings me to Alvin Kamara. The Saints picked Kendre Miller in the 3rd round last year for a reason. Alvin Kamara was amazing for fantasy last year, but it was a mirage. 32% of his fantasy points came from receptions alone. He was getting peppered. That was by far the highest percentage of fantasy points coming from receptions alone among all running backs. This is not counting receiving yards, okay? So don't get me wrong. He's still good in the receiving game, but is he going to be the guy on early downs this year, or will Miller start to get worked in? Kamara is going to be 29 years old in July, and he was one of the least efficient runners in the NFL last year. Among running backs with 100 or more carries last year, he was bottom 7 in missed tackles forced per attempt and yards after contact per attempt. In his limited opportunities last year, he was 11th and 20th in those categories among the 78 qualifying running backs last year. Kendre Miller isn't even 22 years old yet, and he was in the 92nd and 95th percentile in those categories among college running backs over the last 10 seasons. We could see a 1-2 punch in this backfield with Kamara maintaining his pass-catching duties, and I want to buy Miller before we hear any hype out of training camp, get any hype from preseason, and before he gets that opportunity to show that he's a legitimately good running back. He's still affordable. The cat isn't out of the bag yet. Now here's a wide receiver you need to buy now before it's too late. Dontayvion Wicks is currently the cheapest Packers wide receiver you can acquire in Dynasty. There's definitely been a little bit of chatter around Wicks. People are catching up just a little bit, so he's a bit of a popular ad right now for a lot of teams, and there's a reason for that. But since he hasn't completely blown up on the football field just yet, there's still a window in which you can acquire him. First of all, his 1.94 yards per route run was 5th among qualifying rookie wide receivers last year, only behind Puka, Tank Dell, Rashee Rice, and Jaden Reed. That was ahead of Zay Flowers and Jordan Addison. And 1.94 yards per route run, to put into context, is very good for a rookie wide receiver, and he did hit the 250 route minimum threshold that we like to see for future sustainability. There were 74 NFL wide receivers who had at least 60 targets last year, rookie or not, and Wicks ranked 27th in yards per route run as a rookie. And check this out. Guys like Nico Collins, Brandon Ayuk, Tyreek Hill were top 4 in generated quarterback passer rating when targeted last year. And Wicks was 6th on that list among all NFL wide receivers. He's attached to Jordan Love, who we now know is good. And according to Matt Harmon's reception perception, Wicks is now confirmed good. Buy now before it's too late. Let's not sleep on this quarterback. He was an elite fantasy option before he got hurt. Kyler Murray finished as the quarterback 3 in fantasy points per game in 2020, the quarterback 4 in 2021 while dealing with a high ankle sprain, and the QB 8 in 2022 playing through some injuries and then finally tearing his ACL that year. And remember, he didn't have DeAndre Hopkins for most of that season in 2022 because of a suspension. He's leading receiver with Hollywood Brown and Zach Ertz. But now he has Marvin Harrison Jr., he has Trey McBride, and he's a year removed from the ACL injury, which means what? To me, more rushing yards. He had an 800-yard rushing season under his belt. He has an 11 rushing touchdown season under his belt. He's the consensus quarterback 11 right now, and that's a very affordable price tag, given his top 6 upside. Go get him now. Nico Collins was almost unattainable in Dynasty, but now that Stephon Diggs is in town, you have a chance to grab him. You might be hesitant because it's hard to determine what this target distribution will look like, but that can remain true for this season. But let's look further down the line, past this season. Now, will Collins have fantasy value this year? Of course. There's a world where he's still the #1 target for CJ Stroud. There was no wide receiver in the NFL last year who generated a higher passer rating when targeted than Nico Collins. There was no wide receiver in the NFL last year, besides Tyreek Hill, who averaged more yards per route run than Nico Collins. There were only 4 wide receivers last year who had more first downs per route run than Nico Collins: Tyreek Hill, Brandon Ayuk, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and CeeDee Lamb. There was only 1 wide receiver last year who had a higher yards after the catch per reception than Nico Collins, and only 2 wide receivers who had a higher contested catch rate than Nico Collins. Stephon Diggs is not under contract after this year, but you better believe the Texans will be aiming to keep Nico in town given his rapport with CJ Stroud. I totally understand the ambiguity between Nico Collins and Tank Dell as well, but Nico is the more versatile receiver and more dynamic player. He's only a few months older than Tank, and I'd be betting on him to continue to be CJ Stroud's #1 wide receiver for at least a few more seasons. When you're playing second fiddle to one of the best wide receivers in the game in Tyreek Hill, it's tough to sustain elite production alongside him. But there's going to be a point where Tyreek isn't Tyreek anymore. He's coming off an insane season. I'd imagine he has another insane year this year, but he just turned 30 years old, and there can be a drop-off coming up soon. Enter Jaylen Waddle. 25 years old, he's coming off a down year, but let's not forget about his insane 2022 season, his second year in the league. Almost 1,400 receiving yards with 8 touchdowns. He's still paired with Mike McDaniel and could be for another 2 seasons at the very least, as the Dolphins picked up his 5th-year option. The overall numbers were down last year, but his efficiency still supports Waddle being one of the league's best receivers. 6th among some big names in first downs per route run, and 5th in yards per route run. He could easily bounce back this season after his wide receiver 20 season last year. So this is a great time to buy if you're in need of a potentially elite young wide receiver on a great offense with a great play designer. Short one today, guys. I appreciate you. If you could like, subscribe, maybe hit the website, check out our Dynasty kit, check out our rookie draft kit. That would mean the world. Thank you.